Mhm. All right, away we go. Good evening, everybody, and welcome. My name is Emma Legrand, and I'm the Marketing and Communications Manager at Pony Club Australia. I'm thrilled to be your host for this very special webinar with someone who truly embodies the Pony Club spirit. Olympic gold medalist, Pony Club graduate, and now published author, Wendy Schaeffer OAM. Before we begin, I'd like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land we're joining from tonight and pay my respects to their elders past and present. For those who don't know Wendy's story, she's the youngest woman to ever win an Olympic equestrian gold, achieving that incredible feat at just 21 years of age at the 1996 Atlanta Games. And she did it riding her pony club horse, Sunburst, the same horse that took her from grade four eventing all the way to the Olympic podium. Her cross country performance in Atlanta, riding just 9 weeks after breaking her leg, was so extraordinary. It was named one of the top 10 moments of the entire Games by Sports Illustrated. Wendy's journey is one of grit, resilience, and mental strength, qualities that are just as important in Pony Club as they are at the elite level. And tonight she's kindly joining us to share those hard-earned insights. So here's how tonight's evening is going to run. Wendy will speak for about 40 minutes, sharing her story and the lessons she's learned along the way. You'll also get to see some footage from her legendary cross-country ride at Atlanta, and after that we'll move on to around 20 minutes of Q&A. We'll start with some of the fantastic questions submitted in advance, and we'll also be keeping an eye on the Q&A box. So feel free to type your questions in there as we go, and make sure you mention which pony club you're from. We'll go through as many as time allows. And finally, Wendy's amazing new book, Mental Toughness, Your Secret Weapon, Build Confidence and Resilience for Peak Performance, has recently been released and is available on Amazon. Tonight, we'll be giving away some signed copies to lucky participants who submitted a question in advance. We were going to draw those, but we've had such a flurry in the last 15 minutes, we might just have to take our time after the webinar and get back to the winners. So without further ado, please join me in giving a very warm welcome to Wendy Schaeffer.
Great. Thank you very much, Emma, for wonderful introduction and all the work that you have done to bring this to fruition. So it's fantastic to be able to speak with I suppose the Pony Club group from my origins there too, and and share the Sunburst story, which certainly begins when I'm in was in Pony Club myself too. So I was a member of the Mountain Pony Club in Mount Barker, South Australia. And had an amazing time at Pony Club for I think I was there maybe 7 years in the time frame, and started off very young with perhaps not the most appropriate horses. My mum thought it was a good idea that she buy some buy perhaps a Galloway as a 3-year-old, and then put her maybe 8-year-old daughter on that. So not hugely successful. My first entry to the Pony Club eventing wasn't that well, I think I survived, so that was the important toughness part about that. And from there, I was perhaps put on some better ponies at different stages. Certainly, still times where I was, oh, that one's not quite going to work. Maybe we'll put on a good one. And eventually, we did buy one. I think we're seeing it, we're competing successfully around the Monarto horse trials. And like, that's a lot more successful than the one I was riding at the time. So we bought that and had a wonderful partnership with that horse. Through to Pony Club Grade 1 a few years later. But Bronze was my first horse, a lovely thoroughbred gelding. He wasn't raced, so hopefully we had that advantage of not being too sort of revved up with things. But desperately as a 5-year-old, he broke his leg in the paddock. And this is, I suppose, was the first real A setback, I suppose, is an interesting word. The setback can be a lot of things, but that real understanding with sometimes things that are final, and we kind of can't come back from them. So it's certainly a matter of reframing that and looking towards sort of other opportunities. I was very lucky that they had the vet people that serviced us. They had seen that another horse was coming out of racing, a little 5-year-old. I think it was 5 going 6. A quiet, really sweet but naturally talented little horse coming out of racing. We took on, and so that setback with Bronze breaking his leg somehow became a renewal, I suppose, with Sunburst making his way into my life, and as it's panned out to be the best horse I've had in my sort of life and world of competitive sports. So yeah, that was and Sunburst is the one on the back screen too, which is jumping at the Gawler horse trials in our second year there. So that was that's Tommy there. So if I refer to Tommy, then that's actually Sunburst too. Again, I was privileged, I suppose, to have the support base. My mother was into the eventing in a big way. She had represented Australia at the 1986 World 3-day event championships. So perhaps I was 11 years old, I think, at the time, but knew enough or had seen enough to be ambitious enough to was a British rider, actually, Virginia Holgate, that became world champion that year. But just to see that and have that, yeah, that kind of burn, I suppose, thinking, I really would like to be able to do that one day. Perhaps had no real idea about what it would take to achieve that. But that was my sort of inspirational, the ignition of the dream point there, sort of not quite 12 years of age. I was lucky. I had Sunburst ticking along, and we were growing up together and learning together. That was fabulous. But was obviously very privileged to have my mother's horse that had competed at those world championships then. So I took him on 2 years later. So he was going back down through the grades as being a younger junior horse then. So he gave me just that time to grow up with Sunburst and not be wanting to push Sunburst too far through things. But within a couple of years, I suppose, so I took over Sunhill Cloud in 1988. By the time I went to the Naracoorte Young Rider 3-day event for my first time, I was actually able to take Sunburst there as well and have them both there. And in the end, actually, Sunburst just pipped. I think it was one place ahead of Sunhill Cloud, and then it was time for Sunhill Cloud. Not because of that result particularly, but it was time for him to be retired. So I've been very very lucky to have that support base to put me up there. And I think it's probably the Naracoorte of the next year. It's just a little interesting story here, but I had a bit of I suppose one of sometimes you can't sleep at night. I think it was excitement. Cross country was the next day, but had one of those thought processes. Just literally, he was planning out my, career that I knew I wanted to. Sorry, with horses clearly, but wanted to have, with Sunburst in particular, and which events I'd need to get to before I was going to be able to compete at the World Championships in 1994. So 8 years, I suppose, after my mum had competed. And at that point, I was like, okay, well, I'll have to do this year to be able to do this event. So to be able to get to the Gawler 3-day event and be in that team that I was above there. That was 19. Gosh, it's scary, isn't it? 1993, that was competition there. So 1992, I got to the Gawler 3-day event for the first time ever. And then in 1993 was a member of the Australian team. So I think we won it in 92 individually and was second individually in 93. And all these things had to sort of fall into place to get to the World Championships. So it was really interesting to then, so this has happened in 1991, maybe, sort of, 4 years. And then, yeah, just interesting to see how it sort of panned out. And so one of my books, right, I had this process, and then this time this happened, and we did compete there. So the campaign for the World Championships. I mean, of course, everything steps up a level. We've had some slight glitches in Australia at the end of '93. Actually, some pretty silly things, but a couple of refusals on my on our sort of At least I think my dad said at one point, "Oh, you can't go overseas now, can you?" And I was like, "Yeah, I just need to write a bit better." So, fortunately, we did make that decision to go overseas. But as often as the case, we'll do some fundraising and so you certainly feel there's a degree of responsibility to everyone who supported your campaign, and so too. Um, so we went to the first competition was a place called Saumur in France, which I think the Cadre Noir are there. So lovely event. Had a great exposure, great time. Did very well in the dressage and the show jumping. Sorry, cross country. Unfortunately, in the show jumping, we just had a couple of rails down, which sort of sent us down the order and realistically made our chances of making the team or the squad for the World Championships that much slimmer. I suppose it was probably already relatively slim. I'd gone over there. I was 19 years old and relatively inexperienced, but we were there to give us a shot, and it just hadn't quite come to fruition in France. Possibly the horse had been in the country 6 weeks, and they meant to have a little bit of a lull at 6 weeks' time, so they take them over closer to the bigger events now. But really, for me, I just had to be like, well, I've committed a lot of time and money and other people's money to being here, so there's no chance or there's no time, I suppose, time or point in being disheartened about it. Like, where else can I go? And the fantastic thing about being in England is there's so many other big events you could do. So, um, just trying to think. I think the Den Haag might have been at the end of July. So the beginning of September that year, there's also a big event at Burley, another four-star. So there's other things to do. So I wasn't decided, gosh, I'm going to have to go home and not have done anything. But I also knew that I just sort of had to tough it out and see what happened. And again, fortunately, that did sort of work out. I was probably again lucky that you everyone on this call was probably too young to really know know the names, but Matt Ryan was an Australian guy that won both individual and team gold at Barcelona. So obviously he was in huge contention to ride the World Championships. Unfortunately for him, he'd ridden at an event called Althorpe, which was our final trial in England, just a one-day event trial before going to the World Games, and he'd fractured his shoulder, I think possibly off another horse actually. But anyway, so he wasn't fit to ride, and they were trying really hard to get him to be fit to ride, and he was seeing physios and surgeons and whatever. But in the end, he wasn't fit to ride, and I kind of got the call very late that night. I suppose it meant to be I suppose a deadline day. We need to have the the team into the administrators, organisers at the World Championships. So I think about 11 o'clock that night, I got the you're in kind of call. So that was that was pretty exciting. It's just I'm just privileged, I suppose, to do that. That was quite surreal, I suppose. But yeah, I suppose in that whole process of going from a not a very good result in France to have a chance of doing well at the final trial and then having a chance to go to the Europeans, I had to learn to sort of flip my thinking a bit more. Like, I think it's probably fair to say that we all have negative thoughts in our head, and it's just how we're able to turn those down or to just ideally flip them around to be, meaning something. So for me, instead of saying, or listening to that thought that maybe we're just not good enough, after a result at Samoa in France and not good enough to cut it on the international stage. But I, had to flip and say, okay, well, it was disappointing. We had the faults in the show jumping, but the other two, the event itself wasn't a disaster. We had good results in the dressage and the cross country. Um, and then to learn that we can't always I suppose do much about what other people think. So we kind of have to let them think and say what they like. So this might have been other riders or their sort of entourage, that you kind of hear that so and so said this about whatever. But we've got to focus on what thoughts, or I suppose what we think, and then the thoughts we sort of feed ourselves too. So it's important to be able to just reiterate to ourselves, even if I just, as for here, I was just like, I rode good cross country, I had a good dressage, and I will just keep thinking like that. So yeah, the toughing it out there strategy did work. I went to Hawthorpe and didn't win, but had a really good consistent result, and obviously much more productive than poor Matt Ryan's result there was, but that got us into the team. The World Games, yeah, were like a little bit of an only if, but a huge result for me. It was really interesting. You just came to the venue and there was like 94 other competitors competing in this one sort of class, and you're like, gosh, how am I going to finish anywhere in a class like this? Um, so our dressage test was again look pretty successful for what like Sunburst was a best little thoroughbred, but not a big mover, and thorough dressage was never quite my strong point, I suppose. So we worked really hard and we got better and better at it. But for him to score the 60% or whatever it was at that time was still a good result, and was ahead of quite a few of the Australians too. And can't quite remember his actual placing. I think it might have been 40th after the dressage out of 94. So, it was better than half, and that was about where it sort of should have been. The cross country, though, was our time to sort of shine, I suppose. It was quite deep going in the steeplechase, and a lot of horses, and the cross country was quite sandy going. And this is actually a venue, I think it was like the army base, place called Vlasica's. So interesting. Anyway, that was about 3 or 4 hours. I don't know, maybe, but yeah, 2 3 hours out of the Den Haag city. So that actually affected us the next day. But back to the cross country phase, it was quite a long course in those days, like 13 minutes. It's different to sort of how the sport is now. It's a more intense, but it's sort of shorter run as such. But yeah, Sunburst was awesome little thoroughbred and galloped, and I had a little bit of an error in the first water. I think I just rode the distance a bit steady, and I didn't quite get the distance, and he sort of just petered to a stop a little bit because I'd sort of fallen forward on his neck by that stage. And fortunately, he did stop because there was no way I would have stayed on had he jumped. But we came around and jumped the side element to it and carried on. And we were one of 3 horses that day still to make the time, even with the refusal on the cross country. So he, yeah, sort of came up at the lead there. But I think really sort of proved to both me and others, I suppose too, that he was an international horse, a 4-star horse we used to say in those days. Of course, that means 5-star now. But yeah, that was a big deal, and he show jumped well, and we finished 16th in the world. I'm just trying to think. I think that might have been the 3rd best Australian at the time. Now I keep sort of ranking myself with Australians because it all sort of counts towards the next time as we next get selected, and obviously the Olympics was 2 years away at that point. So yeah, it was great to have had that result, but there's always that, oh gosh, if I hadn't have had that stop, but we can always say this, of course. His dressage and his show jumping with a clear cross country that he'd done would have been enough to put him into the individual bronze position. But the only if, as always, but still stoked with that, really good result. The next challenge after that was, I had this expectation that he would be taken home, or Australian horses would go home to Australia, but we're kind of just told, oh no, that's not really an option. And I was quite blasé at the moment. I was like, oh, I'll just go and do badminton then next year. So I didn't get to take the horse home, and there were some others that in the end did get to take the horse home, but look, that was just the way it was, and it gave me an opportunity to compete at events that I certainly wouldn't have otherwise. Yeah, we have there's plenty of challenges in both in Australia and the UK. I actually was kicked by a horse in a stable. Had gone to see a friend's horse, and that didn't work out well, so I had to stay back home and not go back over for badminton that next year. But fortunately was able to go back and compete in the Open European Championships. It's probably the first and only time I think they ran that, allowed other people to start. So it was another fantastic trip to Europe. I think it was about a 3-day trip to a place called Potoni del Vivar in just above Rome, basically. But again, we had a super kind of time there. Doing well in the dressage for where we were. Clear, and I think I might have a couple of time faults cross country, and I just got the timing a bit wrong, and show jumped cleared, finished 9th there. And again, that was kind of like an unofficial World Championships, I suppose, that most of the big eventing countries were there. So we were just, yeah, getting ourselves established and showing, good consistency there. And then we, basically I would go home after my period in the UK. That while I was, very lucky to have had, good support in there, it's always a bit of a challenge when you've kind of got a working pupil role of doing the most of the cleaning up and so forth for other people before you look after your own horse. So again, it was a challenge there, but it's okay. So I came back then the next year and finally did get to ride at badminton. We had a little bit of a significant issue with I suppose with his foot actually. So it was definitely a setback in our preparation and something had perhaps gone back to the year before, but that's when he'd been spelling in England, but that's probably not super relevant that I've found another yard for him. But this did come up. So we had to take the horse not exactly halfway run across country, but about 2.5, 3 hours away to get shods. So essentially, the Australian vet had come and said, "Oh, yeah, it's just not right, is he?" And we're like, "Eh." And he says, "Okay, well, this is the situation. He's got this thing in the foot and so forth that we need to sort out." So I was really grateful, and it showed, I suppose, just how yeah, how invested maybe the lady I was staying in her yard in England. She, basically down tools for the day and took me Sunburst, obviously importantly, sort of across the country, get his foot sort of I say operated on, but it was a sort of surgical farrier, so he had to cut out the necessary stuff, and then just basically hand walked him and swam him for the next like 4 weeks, I suppose, because this must have occurred about 6 weeks out from badminton. And then, yeah, it worked there, but we just had to do what needed to be done without thinking, gosh, is this worth it? Is it going to happen anyway? Kind of thing. So that was really important to have the support people around you to make that happen. And fortunately, we did because badminton was amazing. It's this fantastic sort of venue. It's a sort of privilege to be there. Sort of so much history, I suppose. So look, we did okay. Look, I suppose the horse had a bit of time off, and I'd literally been only able to only get back on him, I think, about 2 weeks before the event. So maybe our dressage wasn't as good as it perhaps had been. But we flew around cross country, and it was a very big water jump actually that was simulated in one of Atlanta. So we were a little bit just lucky to survive that, shall we say? But the horse was very good. And then show jump. I think I might have had a rail dancing. So it wasn't a fantastic performance. I mean, it's on the scoreboard as such, but we still finished 11th, and should be aware the top 12 at badminton get something they call a silver horse. So that was an achievement in itself for that, as I say, the history of the event. And so but the great thing about that, obviously, it would put us in good stead for the selection for the Australian team for Atlanta with that result at badminton. So, in my wisdom as a 21-year-old, I was like, I've got to go home and keep riding horses. The other people over here get to keep riding and competing. With one horse, I don't get to do that. So, I'll go home and ride horses that perhaps weren't really up for hadn't really been in full work. And to be a week later heading down to the Naracoorte horse trials may not have been the best idea, but you learn these things, I suppose, as we grow up. But yeah, I rode a youngish man. It was just in the one, what we now 2 star, I suppose. But it had a tricky enough fence. It was, if you can picture like an octagonal or hexagonal, whatever, one of those banks. You had to jump from one little bank to another jump, and sorry, up to the bigger bank and go on from there. And look, she was just green and jumped up the first one and sort of basically ran out. But as she did that, her sort of feet slipped a bit, I suppose, on the smaller bank, and she essentially cannoned sideways into the wall of a bigger bank, with me obviously riding my leg in that position. So the crack apparently was fairly loud, but I certainly was on the floor going, "Oh my gosh, how long to Atlanta?" And that was the only thing that could go through my mind. So yeah, we're talking setbacks. Yeah, like 9 weeks before the Olympics or before the cross country day of the Olympics, having a fracture was not good, not good. So did the hospital bit, Um, and I think, as a physio student, which I was like second year physio or something, then I was thinking, oh, maybe, and I'm sorry, my mum was with me also, who was a physio. Just, well, maybe if you've only fractured your fibula, which is if basically we've got two bones in our lower leg, the main big one, like our shin bone, that's called the tibia. So that's our main weight bearing bone in the body, and the little one on the side, that's kind of like our pointy ankle bit, is a fibula. Sorry, I didn't really want an anatomy lesson, but I suppose as we took off the so I'm just laughing here too, because perhaps people get their top boots cut off, but when like mum's like, no, it's expensive, you just get it pulled off, you'll be fine. And anyway, I could feel the bone elongating at that point. So I'm like, yeah, it's definitely a tibia fracture too. So that's really not good. And again, just this is, where I'm lucky with perhaps not always have the opportunity, but my mum's cousin's an orthopedic shoulder guy actually, but was just able to kind of make enough suggestions, pull enough strings perhaps to, like that night, basically, I was in surgery, sent me down to the Royal Adelaide Hospital. So I got the flying doctors point, which was great. And then, yeah, down to surgery, which is, a little bit nervous, but at the point you're like, well, either this happens, or I have no chance at all of riding that Atlantis. So that wasn't a choice. So we went ahead with the surgery. And again, just really grateful for how many people feel that really put themselves out to make it happen and make it work for you. So my surgeon was fantastic and got all the different braces. He had like an electromagnetic coil thing on, and he'd just done everything he could do, and the physios there, and yeah, no, it was super. So again, I think I'm a little bit young and naive and able to reframe this. Like, instead of being, God, you got a broken leg, you'll never get to the games. I'd be, the journalists are kind of perhaps thinking along those lines. I was like, well, how cool would it be if I could get there? And yeah, I think I can get there. I ride a horse. It's not like I have to run, is it? But anyway, fortunately, ignorance is bliss, and we did get back on the horse at about, I don't know, 2.5 weeks, and then was, I think without stirrups that time, we were riding at about 4 weeks, back to England, and a few weeks later, on to Atlanta. I think the funniest story, not that it was funny, but we had our gallop trials in England, and the team vet's like, how do you feel? How do you feel? And I'm like, the horse feels great. The horse is galloping well, and I wouldn't be talking about how I'm feeling, and the fact that I've got that, that dead, dull ache. So if anyone hears broken bones before, I think you know what I mean. But that ache thing going on, it's less acute, but more of an ache. But anyway, that was because I suppose the reality was at the time that my leg was still broken. That we'd had sorry, going back to the surgery, I had a Swedish compression plate and about 6 screws, I think. But it was really a bit of a race then for the time of the metalwork, not to fatigue, allowing my leg to. So the metalwork allowed my leg to heal, but would that break before my leg had finished healing? So that was a bit of the race. We'll go back to the result of that later on. So yeah, that was amazing. So I'm jumping a bit everywhere here, but anyway, the vet check, sorry, the gallop size, but no, I'm fine, I'm fine. So the horse gets selected, we're selected, the horse goes on the plane, we go to the training camp in Aiken, which basically worked pretty well. I mean, I had to jump fences again, and I think everyone probably relatively aware of Shane Rose's journey last year to the Paris Olympics. And I kind of again look back and I'm just a bit gobsmacked of how it worked out for me. So with Shane, he had to do, a whole lot of tests he had to do at Melbourne, at least do the combined training, so dressage and show jumping and stuff. So his fracture was about, I think, double the time, maybe like 12 weeks, no, 18 weeks, and mine was 9. So slightly different, but how much he had to do anyway before they put him on the plane to the Olympics. And I feel like, gosh, I actually went over and did my first jump since badminton, over in the training camp in Aiken. And there was a little bit of a fear with that going on, maybe being crazy, if my leg going to hold, all that sort of stuff. And then it's just starting slowly with little plans. So it was building confidence up. And so just had a little pop over a log, I think, the first day before we carried on and moved forward. And, a week and a half later, we were in the Atlanta yeah, the venue there, and look everything is a little bit surreal, I suppose. Often these venues too at the Olympics are often say put together a little bit I say last minute, but they're built out of new, completely new sort of facilities, whereas sometimes, I mean, I suppose Sydney was new too, but previously often the events would be run on some traditional venues, shall we say. But yeah, so Atlanta was amazing. I didn't really walk the course very well because I kind of couldn't, got driven around a bit. But walking in the opening ceremony was amazing. It was a bit scary trying to walk down the quite a steep slope going in. I'm like, really? Does it have to be this way? But took it really steadily, because that would have been a bit embarrassing to fall over and hurt yourself again, not be able to ride because you were desperate to go to the opening ceremony. But I was lucky to get that both ways. But from a competition point of view, it just went our way, and often, because they were better and all the rest of it. But sometimes it's just got to be your way too, that it's your day as such. And I must say that for the whole team, really, we had amazing results. Um, so I think the cross country course, you'll see a bit, was quite tight on the time. I think one French rider made it. Otherwise, then this next three, sorry, it was Andrew Hoy and then Philip Dutton and then myself for the next three fastest times there. And then show jumping again, having that thought process of, gosh, there's only three of us left, so there was pretty good publicity at the time, but most of them are too young to know this. But so Gillian Rolton had a slip on the flat and fell. Yes, it fell there, and then had to get back on with a broken collarbone at that time, because of course that would so never happen these days, but it did. And then she went to the first, second water, pretty big water jump with little capacity to turn, so it was a pretty difficult fence. In full fitness, I suppose. So yeah, that was yeah, it was tough for her. And back in those days, you expected to get back on and finish the horse, which she did, but was not able to. She was drugged up pretty well by then, but the horse was a bit sore because it had that sliding fall too. So she didn't compete on the final day in the show jumping. So we all had to finish. Probably more importantly, we all had to get through the horses had to get through the veterinary inspection. But we unfortunately did that successfully, and we were ready to roll. It was a crazy Olympics after the cross country. We were actually like 61 points in advance, with so ahead in the lead, which is crazy. Like it's usually really quite close and so forth. But yeah, so we went into the final day, and amazing as it was, it's just still had to just get in there, do our job, walk the course, know where we're going, jump the fences. We could afford to have a few rails down each because we had such a lead, but yeah, we rode for pretty good rounds. Sunburst was the only clear round, so in previous years that would have given him the individual gold medal as well. We had known about the change of ruling, so it was both a team and individual competition. It's the first time, I suppose, they'd sort of started swapping it around, and that the format's been mucked around with quite a bit since over the next like 20 years or so. But yeah, it was very, very special time in Atlanta, and surreal to win and stand on the podium, and just like, wow, this has been, this was 10 years of, for me, of dreaming, and certainly the last 4 years of really putting yourself out there, toughing it out, and just doing what you had to do to get the job done. So yeah, it's very, very special. So and I think, definitely when you come back and you've done it, you're then thinking, wow, just how many people have contributed. And I suppose where you started to. So for me, that was at Mountain Pony Club, and no doubt other pony club venues and so forth around the state. I actually remember going to New South Wales for a show jumping championships once. So that was interesting too. So yeah, I've had a fair bit of involvement with Pony Club, and certainly since, and talking and teaching and so forth too. So you're a fantastic movement, and right now you're a whole lot more organised in equestrian Australia. So that's why I think I was keen to come and speak to Pony Club. So thank you. got plenty of answers, plenty of questions, and we can go through the Atlanta cross-country slides too, and just talk through I suppose what was going through my mind and what the preparation and so forth was for them. So we'll go back to Emma for that.
Yeah, cool. Well, we'll start off with your first clip.
Yeah.
I will just share my screen. Okay. Away we go.
As away goes Wendy Schaeffer, the young 21-year-old from Australia, Sunburst. They are, of course, the reigning Olympic champions.
So experienced. I'm sure she has him very, very fit. Now the Fair Play Plantation, the second fence. Big square fence there.
As Wendy Schaeffer, stands right off there. She won't want to be as inaccurate as that later in the course. That could cause her dear. Cost her very dear, in fact. Their first man home as Wendy Schaeffer, the first of the Australians coming to the bounce over the Indian, has safely through there. As alongside us now in the commentary box, Ian Stark himself, who had that unfortunate start.
Yeah. Now, hoping we can see, I was seeing a little bit of sliding and sorry, the footage there, but look, I mean, great to have, very proud to be Australian. I suppose is the first thing coming out of that start box. And look, to be fair, you're probably not really hearing it yourself, but that was sort of what was going through my mind, getting to start in the cross country for for a team like Australia was fantastic. I wasn't, hugely nervous. I suppose again because you're in movement. We'd done the I suppose this is the old days in eventing where we had the phases A and C and the steeplechase. Actually, interestingly, they had a lot of misting fans as part of the deal, given the climate in the heat and humidity in Southern America or Carolina, Aiken at the time. So we had yeah, just to make sure we didn't get too cold, actually, which was interesting. But certainly by the time we got out in the cross country, you're warming up, you're ready to go, and just very, very proud to be there. Now you can see I had a fairly big mistake at fence 3. Or when I say a fairly big mistake, it's just like almost what we say, more embarrassing, a bit of a miss as such, so that I was expecting Sunburst to put another stride in, and he was like, "No, let's go." So that was not a big deal, but it was enough of a tune up for me that was like, come on, you're gonna get your out, get your stuff together a bit better than that. That was a very easy fence, and you got away with it. But just be a bit more sort of tuned on and switched on there. And then also you may have seen quite a slip into the last little fence was on the clip. Was a bounce of Indian humpies, apparently they were called. So yeah, that certainly made me feel like, wow, this is slippery out here. And it had been I think sort of a new turf, and so they laid it down and obviously tried to do it as well as possible, but not having it being a traditional venue as such made a difference, and the going was really slippery. So yeah, but it was again, don't make a mistake, or you've had your chance, shall we say, and then be really careful about the turns and so forth. So yeah, that was it. And next video, Emma.
Okay.
Things as you thought, Ian?
It was big to ride. A lot of the problems were it was very slippery, surprisingly slippery. I mean, I changed the studs in the 10-minute box and put in some big points, and I was very glad that I'd done that because he was still sliding around. But it was very jumpable, very fair course. But you had to concentrate and ride all the way.
Do you think the tactics will change at that fence we just...
Okay, so that was the first water jump, and I feel like I felt I rode it as positively as I could, and I think just as well because he really only just got up onto that bank. Put it this way, I wouldn't have wanted to be any further off it, shall we say. He got up there and jumped it very well, but that was where the top British rider Ian Stark, who was talking there, had his problem. So yeah, at that point, I'm like, yep, course is slippery, but my horse is on fire. He's really keen. I have just got to now manage his enthusiasm with the realities of the footing under his ground. But yeah, very, very important to have a great ride for the first water, to be looking to challenge the second water, which was coming up soon. So again, it was obviously a confidence building that we do something smaller and then we get through to the larger one with good confidence. Next one, please, Emma.
Mhm.
Dans le parcours pénible, une chute. Le résultat est de 32,40 points dans
Great. So actually a video my father took there, which was quite impressive. Maybe it was less scary for him to watch through the video or something, but impressive that he was keen to, or was able to take the video instead of watching. So yeah, tough enough fence. As I said, fairly similar to the badminton water. When we'd walked the cross country course there, I was like, oh gosh, I thought it was going to be smaller, and it just wasn't. And that fence that at badminton I had a bit of a different sort of scare. I think again into the first fence at the water at badminton I'd fallen forward a bit. But to be fair, looking at that video again, I was falling forward as we landed over the second fence. That possibly was also we'd met the island and the bounce so positively that he really jumped. There were some cracking photos of it, but fortunately I don't have a photo of him falling forward on his neck afterwards. And obviously with that design of that course and the way that ran, that you had a bit of time to turn off and take an option there. We were told to do that by the team sort of manager as such, or our team coach, Wayne Wycroft. Although I think one of us probably did go straight on after the landing, then it was a slightly quicker route to the tabletop and perhaps saved 5-6 seconds. But yeah, I mean, it was good to get that fence out of the way, shall we say, that someone had been a little bit concerned about, and we'll come back and talk about the fear element with some of the questions and so too. But really it was a matter of reminding myself before I jumped it that look, you did survive badminton. Literally half the people at badminton, I think maybe 30 horses jumped it, and like 15 fell and 15 survived. So, and some survived better than others and what have you. But I had to bring confidence through that and be determined to do more as well. But good to survive in Atlanta too. Thank you.
Great, and think the whole way. There was nowhere you could take it easy.
Many points of the course looked like many others. Did you ever feel as you came over?
Okay, I think there was just a really short clip for the fixed 16. Probably didn't need to go there, but it was just I suppose what we call a let up fence, which is designed to be easy and let the horse just gallop to it. We still want to give the horse the best possible ride though, and as much as we can, like not to interrupt the rhythm at all. So I couldn't afford to have a mistake at any fence anymore, and certainly not at an easy one like that. But we had a good jump and galloped well away from it. Okay.
Land, as it were.
How did the Olympic rings ride in the end?
Well, in fact, I went the left-hand route, the slower route, and I think that that's probably the safest way to go. It's only one jump. I think the right-hand route, the quick route, it's very short stride in there, and I'm not sure many will try it now.
Yes, we felt that almost everybody.
A lovely job through the Olympic ring. She's taken a very quick route, and the pair of them are going extremely well. Sunburst is 16 years old. Wendy, with a leg barely mended from a bad break 2 months ago, She's only 21. Her first team appearance for Australia.
Schaeffer has jumped it beautifully.
Yes, she's going terribly well. I mean, it's a
Great. First, I'd like to congratulate my father on that video with the slicing in and out between the commentators that you may have noticed. But look, it was an interesting situation with the Olympic rings. We had walked, I'd walked to the very right-hand side, which it's hard for you to really look at that now, but it's sort of the two rings come down through that. And in the end, they went to the side and come down the bottom of ones. I hadn't actually walked that as a line, but as we got into the 10-minute box, a lady called Vicky Roycroft, so it was Wayne Roycroft's wife, huge experiences. Both she's an Olympian in both both the eventing and the show jumping. Anyway, so she was like, be better lying, less so it's taxing on the horse, and so it was enough positives to give it a go. But in the end, Wayne said, look, if you're not confident that you have the line, then just do what you're going to do, kind of do what you were going to do. But fortunately, as I came over that hill there, I was like, oh yeah, I can see that if I just stay out a little bit wider, I can come down through there. So that was just an adaptability situation, and because no one sort of likes change, I suppose, but you can see the advantage was worth considering. So I had to be open to thinking about that. Unfortunately, that worked. Yes, thank you.
somebody else in form.
Wendy.
And Wendy Schaeffer now at this sunken road and very quickly through there.
And a lovely 2 strides. In fact, my horse banked that grass bank and put in a 3rd stride in there. He was very clever, but
Yeah, I'm just saying, Stark sort of said it all, that met that quite well, and he Sunburst is a good little jumper. You can just have to see that he's got quite close into the first of the I suppose the island oxer thing, but jumped it carefully and was able to still get his 2 strides through there. So yeah, we're on fire. We're sort of certainly in our zone there. Quite confident and focused. So I at that point now was quite confident that my body would hold together, or my leg would hold together. And I absolutely trusted my pony club partner that he'd do the job, as long as it didn't muck it up. And just going back to the video of so it's just leaving the rings there. That's to where Lucinda Green makes that fantastic comment about being together since Pony Club right through the Olympics. So yeah, that's what tonight is about too. Thank you.
Wendy's the one our minds are on at the minute, because this is flowing. This is looking like a little horse, and he is only little, that's really enjoying himself. They had a great combination. They've been together from Pony Club right through to the Olympic Games. It's your ultimate fairy tale, these two.
Okay, well, so that was the Lucinda comment one, but yeah, no, that's pretty cool. And at that point, that was our fourth last jump there. So we'll see the last few coming up. But yeah, we're on a roll. Home as fast as we could. Thank you.
Vicky round, they are the Olympic champions. And she, I think, has gone as fast as any, Ian, and looks to be sort of running.
she looks as though she had a brilliant ride. I mean, interestingly enough, Wendy hasn't been able to walk the course at all. She's had to be driven around the course every time because she broke her lower leg, both bones in her lower leg, a week after badminton, I believe, and she's had it still strapped up. So she's doing an amazing job, a quick recovery from a fairly horrific break. And over the second last, that's a big fence under her hat there, but the last 2 are reasonably straightforward, although they're big. They're not difficult. And she's coming now to the last jump. And brilliant, well done her. She should be delighted. That's a fairly small horse, and the time isn't incredibly good. I think that's probably the fastest of the day, 10:30.
Yes, it is, Ian. It is the fastest of the day, 11.6, and that's going to put Australia ahead of New Zealand with just the
Yeah. So relief, but just really proud of Sunburst and the fact that we've been able to tough it out and do the job under not ideal conditions, shall we say, but yeah, support so much as so it's really grateful at that point. I suppose we still have to be aware there's another day to go, but I even remember sort of that night we had a like an little Australian house thing that was close to the venue that which we've been staying at the Olympic Village was like a 50-minute bus ride. But yeah, we stayed sorry, we spent that night to be ready to get up for the the vet inspection or getting the horses ready for that. But yeah, fortunately our grooms and vets did a really good job and they all presented ready to go for the next day. So I think we're moving to the questions now.
We will. Thank you so much, Wendy. Like, what an incredible journey and such powerful insights. I know there will be so many riders and coaches and parents feeling very inspired right now. So as you said, yes, we'll move on to our Q&A session where we'll dive a little deeper into some of the themes you've touched on tonight. I'm conscious that we're going a bit over time, but if people are happy to hang in there, we might try and get out another 15 or 20 minutes of questions before wrapping up. So thank you to everyone who submitted questions in advance. And also during our webinar tonight, we've had a fantastic response from across the whole country, and we'll get through as many as we can. So if something Wendy has said tonight sparked a question for you, feel free to pop it in the Q&A box now, and we'll keep an eye on them as we go. So I'll get started with one of our first questions submitted in the lead up. This one is from Steph Commons from Dalby Pony Club in Queensland. Wendy, what were 3 things, mentally, habits, people around you that you felt took you from pony club amateur to professional / Olympic level?
Yeah, it was certainly that dream and that ambition that perhaps really ignited in 1986 at those World Championships. So huge privilege to be able to be immersed in the sport at such a young age, and that was obviously through my mother's involvement too. But yeah, no, I just really wanted it, so that was critical. Second is the horsepower, that we have to have the right horse to get there, and I've found that harder in later years than obviously I did as a teenager there with Sunburst. So yeah, that it's pretty special to have that. And the eventing horse has to be a little bit the jack of all trades, but they've got to be pretty good at them too, and obviously specialists at the cross country. So yeah, we're only as good as riders. We're only as good as what we're sitting on. So yeah, very lucky to be sitting on Sunburst. Yeah. And then really, I think that's the quality of the training that I had. I was so very fortunate to train with so many instructors locally. Wayne Roycroft was our national team coach for, gosh, the period since I was maybe 14 or something through to when I went to Atlanta, so and longer. So he must have been there sort of 20 odd years. So he would always bring in other instructors too. So that was really important. And really, just the time that I had in the UK that was quite tough. When I, say not tough, you didn't get to not eat or anything, but almost tougher mentally that you were having to work. At one point, I was working for another rider that was campaigning for the same team for those World Championships early on. So yeah, it was a little tough to be different sort of side of things there, I suppose. But I think that all gets you there, and they're probably the answers I would give to that question. Yes.
The next question is from Meg Keenan from Kingston Pony Club in South Australia. She would like to know, did you get scared at all? I think top riders must have something different that they think about or do to help them get through the really tough times or to help them with things that scare them. And I would love to know what some of those are.
Yeah, I think it's fair to say that we all get scared or insecure. So the difference is just how do we deal with it and manage it. But fear is an inherent part of life. It's actually a natural response to protect us. So it's really a matter of getting our head around what is perhaps a what fear arising from our perceptions, not necessarily sort of real threats. And again, that's often easier said than done, but we were looking to break things down, or to listen to people who are around you to help you. What do they really think that you should be scared of? Like, is that jump just ridiculously big and that's going to really hurt yourself, but not that you'd be looking to do that anyway? Or is that okay? What do you ask, what you're being asked to do, perhaps by an instructor or anyone that you trust? Is that okay? And having that feedback there. But thinking about fear as a weakness of our own, so this is listening to our own sort of mental, our own voices as such, that just really means that fear has control over us. So we've got to think, no, we've got control over it, and now, heading up, sort of taking it on, even if we're looking at just chipping away at little bits, we don't have to go right for the guts of it as such. But it just will help us sort of navigate when bad things happen, so adversity, but also then we do discover our inner strength, and we can do that. I mean, we all know that there's times we have things where we're really fearful, or just don't think we're going to be successful at something, but if we do chip away and do it and get that bit of success from it, it certainly helps us. So we need to do that, to then almost have it the opposite, that fear then motivates us to go, I can, that scares me and it's tough, but I know that by getting through that, I'm going to be able to be successful at something else. I'm motivated to take on that fear. And let's say that then is a catalyst for growth, so that we learn and we move through that.
Very good. Our next question is from Kate Van Dalen from Cannon Vale Pony Club in Queensland. This is a good one for the grown-up crowd. Parenthood often shakes confidence in our adult members. How can they reclaim it?
Yeah, absolutely. And we can all have confidence that is shaken by life events. But I understand, and I've just got to make a caveat here that I've never done it, the parenting thing, or being a parent. So, but I certainly understand that brings like a far greater responsibility to those you have brought into the world, but also perhaps to significant others or partners that are helping raise those children, or just dealing with day-to-day workloads. That so it's a different kind of, it's a situation. You can't just go out and do what you like anymore. I imagine there's a bit more of a responsibility there. So my advice in that is just to really ensure that you're appropriately mounted, that you can sort of help build, maintain, and hopefully increase your confidence with the right horse. And even if that's being a little bit less ambitious with the horse than perhaps you would have been, prior to children, if you can just have that slightly even if it's shall we say, more appropriate is the right word, but not so much the feisty sort of thoroughbred, and something that's a little bit easier, that you're probably going to be able to achieve more, even just having a more relaxing ride, or achieve what you're looking to achieve with having a horse. And if that's still competition, then that's great. But hopefully it'll be a safer challenge there. So and then sort of thing, just to be setting yourself up for success, how we ride in what situation, and vary depending on the horse, I suppose. But maybe you wouldn't go out on a group ride out in big back paddocks like mine, or something, that you might not take on that sort of ride. You might like, okay, no, we'll just go out on a quieter hack down the road, or a different area. So it's just the things we might want to be rethinking about how we sort of structure our training and riding.
Sure. Here's one from Poppy from Ballarat Pony Club. How do you differentiate between a bad ride and a bad day? And how do you reset?
Yeah, I mean, interesting, isn't it? I mean, a bad ride and a bad day. I suppose bad days when you have more than one bad ride. I suppose the bad ride might be one that we create more. So, okay, a horse isn't feeling great, it's stiff, or it's maybe it's a day that we ask too much of the horse, or our response to what we perceive is not a great feel that they're giving us, is yeah, it's counterproductive, I suppose. So that would be what I would more term a bad ride, that we've made it a bad ride. A bad day would be, okay, he's stiff, maybe he's, I don't know, been in a stable or traveled, whatever, and then we just have to give the horse that bit of leeway and not turn it into a bad ride.
Yeah, sure. Next one from Casey Townsend from Fern Park Pony and Riding Club in Tasmania. She asks, have you ever had a horse that challenged you emotionally or mentally more than others? What did you learn from that experience?
Yeah, interesting. I think emotionally, perhaps the ones you think are going to be really good, or maybe you've had like for a horse at the moment is bred out of a man that I had that did really well in the Adelaide 5-star or something, and so he's had foal, and it's just been more challenging, or maybe I just hadn't had enough time for him either. But yeah, I mean that I sort of would consider more emotionally challenging, possibly. But I think it's just really important to say the horse doesn't know all this sort of stuff. He doesn't have no idea how he's, bred or what they potentially mean to you. So we just need to treat them as horses and be as objective as possible.
Mm. Next question is from Kate Taylor, the president of, I'm going to mangle the pronunciation of this, Bauhinia Hack and Pony Club in Queensland. Her question is, how did or this may not be relevant, but we'll see. How did or do you overcome imposter syndrome, especially in situations where you're maybe not performing at your best due to external factors, but manage to push through and overcome?
Yeah, I suppose that possibly was the getting to the World Championships. And as I said, I was sort of this, like 19-year-old kid on a pony club horse. And I don't mean to say that was derogatory at all, but he wasn't, a horse that had been a lot of money had been spent buying him or anything. He'd been a $600 horse that I took to pony club, and we grew up there. So yeah, there's a little bit of that, but I suppose bottom line is you get to go, well, you've just got to do what you can do, and really focus internally on how your horse is feeling. Make sure I know my test and my routes and my jumping courses, etc. And that, also have that confidence to say we wouldn't be here if we weren't deemed to be capable. I suppose certainly at competitions like that, and the 5-stars, and so there's fairly stringent qualification processes. And yeah, just to say we're not here because we wouldn't be here if we weren't meant to be here, and we're not here just for the party. We're here to give it a good shot.
Mm. Another question. This one is from Montana from Peak Downs Pony Club in Queensland, and she would like to ask how you actually go about staying confident when you're feeling nervous.
Feeling nerves. I have this bit of a funny thing, because I was just talking to Emma about it before, that I like to have affirmations. So that's something that's really good to be going through your head. When your negative thought wants to go, are you good enough? Should you be here? You're like, I'm a great rider on a special pony. I'm a great rider on a special pony, and just flipping through. You might want to have more than one, but affirmations through your head there. But yeah, I also had done things like kind of make up little song bits, and I remember having a horse at the Kentucky World, sorry, 2007 Kentucky 5-star, and I was making up like a little ditty to Kazali, and it was like, so up there, madam, out there and fly, come on, Mr. Foxy, blah blah blah. So whatever, however that worked, but I had that to the point where I could just be going through that in my mind, some other much, and even if it was just to drown out negative thoughts or not let them surface at all. So yeah, I've done that a bit. Yeah.
Very good. Another question. Savannah, age 9, from Blackwater Pony Club, asks, what made your partnership so special with Sunburst, and how did you build that partnership and trust?
I think it was just the time too. That, I mean, obviously it needs to be good time rather than bad time. So I would have been 11 going 12, I suppose, when I took on Sunburst. And he was just a lovely little horse. He was funny that he was quite grumpy with other horses. He was quite bossy in the paddock and so forth. But he was just really sweet natured and very straightforward to ride, I suppose. So a really good horse to be putting a youngish child on, shall we say. how did I, bond with him? We did just so much special stuff together, and bottom line is I had, a lot of respect for him as a talented, particularly jumping and galloping horse, and he, did so much for me really from the word go that while I respected him enough to not push it so hard initially, and as I said, I was lucky to have the ride on the older horse of mum's, but yeah, Sunburst was always special, and yeah, he was great.
Hmm. A question now from Amelia McDonald from King River Pony Club in Albany, WA. So Amelia says she's 15 and hoping to get on the state team to compete at nationals in Victoria this year with her new horse. How do you manage your stress and your horse's stress in new environments?
Think it's certainly knowing your horse, what may or may not sort of help him. Like, do you go out, if you go for a ride out, do you go out in company? Even if you're going to walk the horse out to graze, do you make sure another horse is with him and so forth? Make sure he's not left behind in the stable. That's a big one. Some of them get quite anxious in that situation. So just I think it is a matter of knowing your horse and trying to be really structured in how you do things, as they can make quite a difference to where your horse sits in the stress level. But just to get out, get out from just riding them is often just the best way of alleviating any sort of tension. So perhaps before you dressage, you'd be riding a bit. But again, if they're stabled, getting out of the stable as often as possible in a structured way, that's going to be helpful. So think about it, I suppose, is the important thing.
Sarah Can from Claremont Therapeutic Riding Centre in Perth. I've got lots of questions from Perth. Says, what would you, or she's just asking generally your thoughts on fitness and healthy eating.
Very, very important. Yeah, I mean the fitness. I suppose we need to be riding fit as much as anything else, but it depends on, unless you're really riding 10, 12 horses a day, then you probably need to be doing something else on top of that. For the eventing sport anyway, that needs that sort of cardio situation. And again, just that old adage that you are what you eat. So we be very careful about what we feed our horses. So to be thinking about what we feed ourselves is very important also, and that often takes a lot of discipline. And I haven't always been the most disciplined when I was in England, not riding many horses, and so it's very easy to put on weight there. But yeah, no, I think important and very critical that we think about what we feed ourselves as much as what we feed our horses.
Mm.
And the fitness, sorry, for the horses, yeah, no, that's really serious. I think it's a responsibility we have to have them fit to keep them safe. If they're not fit, then the risks of injury is much more significant, and also risk of injuring ourselves too.
Mm. From Kylie, what advice would you give to a kid with a dream who may not have access to the finances to fund campaigning?
Yeah, a difficult one, isn't it? Because obviously it is so expensive. Just immerse himself as much as you can. There's so much material on YouTube and probably Facebook and so forth, and to really be immersing himself in watching that, and then perhaps having a bit of a discussion with someone. How am I thinking? Is that sort of within the ballpark of what I need to be thinking? That I think sometimes you just write to some of the top riders that I think that it's probably time to do something like this, that they can be involved. I know that Shane Rose has done a fair bit with the pony clubs and so forth in his areas. So the other thing is really to, I suppose at this stage, not a young rider can't go and live with that with the other riders and so forth. But as time goes on, they can be more independent to go and do working pupil situations, and just get to see how the bigger or really anyone at the higher level, how their yard runs and what their sort of habits and routines are.
Cool. Thank you so much to everyone who submitted these questions. There's been some great ones, and we're just about out of time, so we'll make this one our final question for Wendy. I just think this is a classic. Harrison 11 from Loopline PC in New South Wales wants to ask, Do you think all of the newer safety gear would have been helpful for you back in Atlanta?
Um, as in, are we talking the pins and so forth, or what we're riding? As in, no, it's probably two lots of things. So, what we are. I mean, I suppose actually to be fair, the helmet I was riding and or were issued with actually was pretty lightweight, so that would not have met the current criteria. I think we're back protectors without having to be in the the inflatable ones. And I think we're talking with the fences and so forth with the deformable, the frangible pins where the fences will um yeah, can't look. I mean, definitely, there's certainly evidence to show that less likely there's fatalities if the fence falls and so forth. So yes is the answer. I suppose we're just fortunate that that didn't occur that day. Let alone have
Mm.
a catastrophic sort of situation.
I was thinking you're already carrying your broken leg, so anything that was going to minimize any further damage would have been a very, very good and beneficial thing.
I was actually wearing a brace, so a plastic brace, which bottom line to the fracture that sort of help prevent it being damaged. I suppose I wasn't able to have my foot to a certain level, so it was just restricted how much movement I could have the ankle based
Mm.
brace did there. So
Very good. Well, Wendy, thank you again for sharing your story with us with such honesty and generosity and for giving us so many practical strategies to take away, whether it's managing nerves or reframing setbacks or building true resilience. I know tonight's session will have a lasting impact. Um, so before we wrapped up tonight, I was going to announce the winners of our book giveaway, but as I indicated earlier, with our late flurry of questions, I needed a little bit more time to go through them. But we will be in touch with that announcement. So to everyone who joined us, thank you so much for spending your evening with us. A reminder that we've recorded tonight's session and it will be posted soon on the Pony Club Australia YouTube channel, so you can rewatch it or share it with others at your club. And of course, if you would like to dive deeper into the strategies Wendy shared tonight, her new book is available on Amazon now. Just jump on and search up Wendy's name or the title, Mental Toughness, Your Secret Weapon, Build Confidence and Resilience for Peak Performance. So on behalf of all of us at Pony Club Australia, thank you again, Wendy, and thank you all for being a part of tonight's special event. Have a wonderful evening and we'll see you next time. Thank you.